doing it with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. And Mike Pettin knows that they have made things very, very difficult on themselves. The Buffalo loss, everybody knows how deflating that was to begin with. But yesterday, just the emotion that was coming out of that locker room and the emotion that was coming out of Mike Pettin, that's a game that the Browns gave away. So this is back-to-back weeks that they have given a game away solely because their quarterback is garbage.
Yeah, and the excuses are out for Brian Hoyer. He had almost his full complement of weapons yesterday. Miles Austin was not out there, but Jordan Cameron was back.
Yep.
Josh Gordon was out there again. The offensive line has been together for a little while. They had a new center yesterday in Ryan Seymour. He did fine. His running backs were there. They were producing. The string is out if you're going to make excuses for Brian Hoyer at this point. There's no excuses to be made. He did not play well, and if they could have scored one touchdown, one more touchdown, they could have won that game.
Just looking at yesterday's game in particular, Dan, ask Andrew Luck how much he would like to play behind the Browns offensive line. Ask Andrew Luck how much he would like to be able to hand the ball off to Terrence West, Isaiah Crowell, guys like that. So many people have focused on the offensive line, the lack of weapons for Brian Hoyer, the lack of a running game, and this and that. It's just really deflecting what the true issue is. And bad quarterback play, Dan, it's like a disease. It really is.
Yeah.
And it has started to spread. First it was the offense. Now it's starting to spread through the entire locker room, the entire organization. This looks like a defeated team. And Mike Pettin's going to have his hands full trying to get this team to believe again for the final 3 games if they even can make a run here.
And Mike Pettin needs to do it today. And I understand that he didn't want to do it yesterday. You don't do something like that after a game. Everybody's emotional. After the media talks to the coach, they're going to go into that locker room. You don't want to expose the players to having to deal with, your coach announcing a quarterback switch right after a game. But he's got to do it today at his press conference at 4 o'clock. There's no reason to wait until Wednesday again. There's no reason to say that I'm going to watch the film. I don't know what you need to rewatch to see that it's time to make that change. You've got to make the switch today. You've got to let your players know this is what we're doing. Get on board with it. And the other thing is now this week, there's no one in that locker room that can say with a straight face, you got to stick with Brian Hoyer, or I'm behind Brian Hoyer. There's no one in that locker room that can argue against making a quarterback
And if
switch.
you do stick with Brian Hoyer, what's the reasoning for it?
There isn't one.
I can't think of one.
You can't even say, some people are making the argument, I thought it was a false argument, that Brian Hoyer gives you the best chance because he's a veteran or whatever in a playoff chase. But what has this team done since they've been all alone in first place? They've won 1 game.
That's right.
So Brian Hoyer hasn't gotten it done in a playoff chase. And I don't know, there's also a lot of people saying, well, they would have won that game yesterday with Johnny Manziel. They would have beaten Buffalo with Johnny Manziel. I'm not going to go that far. I don't know that that's true. But he couldn't have done worse.
I believe Johnny Manziel could have gotten you 1 touchdown.
Probably.
That's all they needed. That's all they needed from Brian Hoyer. On a day like yesterday, Dan, the defense played as good as the defense is going to play all season long. They can't duplicate that performance. They simply can't. That was the best offense in the NFL. That's an offense in the Indianapolis Colts that averages 31 points per game. That's as bad as I've seen Andrew Luck look all season long. That's as comfortable as I've seen the Browns' defense look all season long. They can't duplicate that performance. You gave that game away. You wasted the best defensive performance that you're going to get all season. That's the reality of yesterday. And all you needed from your starting quarterback was one freaking touchdown. That's it. Justin Gilbert has been a disaster this year, an absolute disaster. He's been inactive. He's been benched a few different times. He's got as many touchdowns as Brian Hoyer has, and Brian Hoyer has had 50-plus possessions to equal that mark set by Justin Gilbert yesterday.
Craig Robertson, too.
Craig Robertson,
by the way, has now...
Same thing. He has as many touchdowns as Brian Hoyer does, and Brian Hoyer has had 50-plus possessions. Think about that. Put that in perspective. You need your quarterback to get 1 touchdown to win the game, and he can't do it. He was 14 of 31. He completed 45% of his passes. I mean, my goodness, that's Derek Anderson, that's Charlie Fry, that's Tim Tebow. That's horrendous.
This is what kills you about the game. The defense yesterday. And the defense has been getting better and better and better all season long. I mean, you can sit down and you can just chart it all out, and the defense has been getting better. And yesterday you had not just one of the best performances for the Browns this season defensively, this was probably one of the best performances defensively in the entire NFL, considering who they were going up against, considering that they scored 2 touchdowns. They had a chance to win that game. Right. And even that 4th down play where Boom Herron bounced outside, they had him stopped. He just happened to stay on his feet, stumble around the end, and get that 1st down. It's hard to even pin that on the defense. It was just, that kills you. Yeah. That your defense played like they did yesterday, and you lost that game in the middle of a playoff chase. You win that game, whole different discussion today about the playoffs, about playing Cincinnati next week. Just so many things are different today if you just get 1 touchdown.
And for Mike Pettin, you know, when he looks back at this film, Dan, he's not the only one that's going to be watching film. The players are going to watch it too. And that's the thing that he needs to worry about. Because I think last week he didn't make the switch to Johnny Manziel because he was scared as a first-year head coach to lose veterans and lose part of the locker room. But that kind of loss yesterday, the way the Browns played defensively, to still lose that game against Indianapolis, I think that's another way that you can lose veterans and you can lose the locker room. And he's got to be very, very careful because the players know. The players see what is happening. The players saw Brian Hoyer and the Browns offense go 3 of 14 on 3rd down. The players saw Brian complete 14 of his 31 passes. The players saw 60 yards of total offense from the Browns in the second half. The entire team knows that the Browns have forced 21 turnovers in the last 8 games and gotten three touchdowns from those 21 turnovers. So Mike Pettin, as much as he was cognizant of the locker room last week, and he didn't want to go to the kid probably because of that, he needs to worry about getting his locker room back a little bit because I sensed a lot of frustration yesterday. I sensed a lot of defeat coming from that locker room. Yeah,
and it'll be curious to see how the Browns handle it if they do make a quarterback switch, if they wait for Mike Pettin to announce it at 4, because the players are available first, and then Mike Pettin talks. Or if, as they've done in the past, they send out a press release earlier in the day. And of course, it all depends on when Mike Pettin makes his decision. Obviously, most people think it's a pretty easy one. We'll see how he wants to go about it.
I think it's an easy one, too.
I think it is,
too. You've played 3 games in a row. You've gotten 1 touchdown from your quarterback. You guess who that quarterback was that had that touchdown. It wasn't Brian. It wasn't. He's regressing. He's getting worse. The defense knows how to attack the Browns when Brian Hoyer is in there, and Brian Hoyer has nothing to go to make an adjustment. Johnny Manziel has the only touchdown from a quarterback in the last 3 games. Yeah. And you can say what you want to. You can say it was against prevent defense. You can say it was against a soft defense. You can say that the game was out of reach. There have been times where Brian Hoyer has gotten touchdowns in that same kind of situation too. Yeah. So I don't want to hear that.
And I do, look, when we talk about Johnny Manziel, again, it kind of goes back to what I said before, how people are saying, well, the Browns' record would be this if Johnny Manziel had been starting, or they would have won this game or that game. We have to have reasonable expectations for Johnny Manziel as well. The guy's never prepared for a football game in the NFL to start. The guy's never started a game in the NFL and had to play a full 4 quarters. So, you have to pump your brakes a little bit with the expectations of Johnny Manziel. But that doesn't mean that he shouldn't be the guy that's out there.
Yeah. I think it's all about trying to give your offense the best chance to move the ball. And I don't think the Browns can move the ball right now with Brian. And that's what it comes down to. Him having the worst completion percentage of any starting quarterback in the NFL, that's not an offensive line problem. That's not a wide receiver problem. That's not a running game problem. That's not on the defense. That's not on the coaches. That's on one person. That's on Brian Hoyer. You can make the argument, Dan, that after his quick start or his winning start, however you want to call it, that we have played all but 3 games so far this season, and Brian Hoyer is in the conversation as the worst quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers in the last 4 games. And again, that goes back to They were all alone in first place. And what have they done since? What has Brian Hoyer done since? So you can make the case, well, he's won, and he's gotten you to what now is 7-6.
Yeah.
But what has he done since you were all alone in first place in Cincinnati? He's gone 1-3. He hasn't done anything.
You're not replacing a guy like Alex Smith.
No.
So many people talk the Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick thing. You're not replacing Alex Smith. You're replacing Tim Tebow, Geno Smith, John Skelton, that caliber quarterback. And that's all it's about. And I feel like Johnny Manziel just gives you that spark, gives you the element of the unknown. And I think if you would have asked Indianapolis last week, hey, who were you more concerned to play against, Brian Hoyer or Johnny Manziel? Because of the unknown, because of the added dimension of Johnny Manziel being able to run the ball, I think Indianapolis would have said, hey, we're more scared of Johnny Manziel here.
Couple other things.
It doesn't mean that he's going to be great, though.
Oh, no.
And you know that.
Yeah.
He's going to have his growing pains. He's a rookie. He's going to go through ups and downs.
There's a very good chance that these last 3 games, if he starts these last 3 games, they're going to lose one of them, at least, because of Johnny Manziel.
1-2, 2-1, something along those lines.
That's what's going to happen, but you have to give it a shot.
He'll have a Buffalo moment. Of course he will. The best rookie quarterback so far this year has been Teddy Bridgewater. He's 5-4. That's a 500 player. So Johnny Manziel, 2-1, 1-2, something along those lines. Maybe 0-3. I don't know. But I bet he gets a touchdown, that's for sure.
I want to go back to something Ray Farmer said when he had his press conference, and they talked about putting Johnny Manziel in. And he said something along the lines of, they want all the pieces to be in place when Johnny Manziel finally starts. They want everything to be around him that needs to be around him. And you and I were talking about it before we came on. Put yourself in Andrew Luck's shoes, okay? If he could just pick and choose skill positions around him, and he had to choose between the Browns and the Colts. Is there a specific unit on the Colts that you think he would choose over the Browns? Maybe receiver?
Offensively?
But I think you could maybe, offensively, you could maybe make the case that the Browns have a pretty good receiving core, even if you'll take the Colts over them. Certainly the running back situation, the offensive line. It's hard to really point out offensively where the Colts are significantly better, if they are significantly better, than any of the Browns' offensive units.
I think that's a fair point, Dan. I think the only one that I would look at is probably wide receiver / tight end.
But even for the Browns, you still have Josh Gordon.
That's right.
You still have Jordan Cameron. Gary Barnidge is gone. Jim Dre has been okay this year in a backup role. Andrew Hawkins, Taylor Gabriel, no more Miles Austin, but you've got guys on the Browns receiving-wise. Maybe they aren't to the same level as the Colts aside from Josh Gordon. They're still pretty good.
Right, that's the thing.
They still come up with big plays.
That's the thing, Dan. It's not a huge gap. In the past, it's probably been a huge gap. Now, I'm really thinking about this one because I would know that I'd have to be giving up on Josh Gordon and Jordan Cameron and things like that. So I'd upgrade because I think there's more depth, like you mentioned, T.Y. Hilton, Reggie Wayne, Dante Moncrief, Hakeem Nicks, Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen. Those are really good guys that you want to get the ball in the hands of, but the Browns, the gap is not as significant as it has been last year, the year before that.
And the point is, now you've got the pieces around him. You've got that structure around him that you wanted before you put him in there. And he's stepping into a very nice situation. The only pieces he's missing, really, Alex Mack, that's a big one, and Miles Austin. Those are the 2 biggest pieces that he'll be playing without.
Well, I think there's another thing in play here, though, Dan. And I want Johnny Manziel to be the starting quarterback of this team because I've seen enough of Brian Hoyer. Plenty enough of Brian Hoyer. I mean, I had this guy pinned from the very beginning. That's why I went to Uber instead of hitching a ride on the Hoyer train. Mike Pettin has to believe in Johnny Manziel. He has to believe in Johnny Manziel, the quarterback, but he has to believe in Johnny Manziel, the person. And I think some of Johnny Manziel's antics away from the football field, and maybe antics is too strong of a word. His choices away from the football field have caused Mike Pettin, Kyle Shanahan, Dal Loggins, Ray Farmer, everybody in the organization, the players, I think, in the organization, to pause a little bit and take a step back. And it's up to Johnny Manziel to show that he's mature enough to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Because this is the interesting thing, Dan. In sports, it's not just about the biggest, the fastest, the most athletic, the strongest. If it was like that, you'd just draft this big freak of nature athlete, right? And then you would win. But you don't always draft the best athlete. or the fastest guy.
Call up Jared Lorenzen. Bring him in. Let him play quarterback.
Right? I mean, there are physical freaks out there, but you don't draft them because you got to have it upstairs too. Because you have to have the discipline. You have to have the preparation. You have to have the right mindset. There's so many things that go into being a successful football player, and it ramps up so much more when you're talking about the quarterback. And I don't think Johnny Manziel has conducted himself the way that a quarterback in the NFL should be conducting himself. And this goes back to the offseason, too, when he's floating his cares away on a swan. And he's going to Las Vegas, and he's talking, well, Rob Gronkowski was there, and this guy was there, and that guy was there. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. You're supposed to be the quarterback of the Browns, the future of the Browns, maybe the leader of an offense. You have to find a way to conduct yourself as a professional. And if he's not mature enough, Dan, to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, then the Browns may not have a choice but to go back to Brian Hoyer. And only Mike Pettin knows the answer to whether Johnny Manziel is mature enough for this kind of responsibility. Because being a starting quarterback in the NFL is a huge responsibility. First one in, last one to leave. No matter what time it is, no matter where you go, you're Johnny Manziel, quarterback of the Browns. And I don't think the kid gets it.
Yeah, well, you're another coach. That's what you are.
Yep.
You're the quarterback. And that's the other side of this that we don't know. Like you said, we know what we've seen on the field from Brian Hoyer. We think we know what Johnny Manziel can do. And there's some question marks based on the little bit of playing time that we've seen from him. But we don't know how hard he's working.
Yeah.
And we don't know how he's preparing. We don't know. I mean, we think that, okay, he went to that Cavs game last week, big deal.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a big deal.
Right.
Maybe there was something he should have been doing instead of going to a
Maybe.
Cavs game. I don't know. And there is a double standard. Your quarterback is not your cornerback. Joe Hayden can go to a Cavs game.
That's exactly right.
And again, I don't know. Johnny Manziel's allowed to go to Cavs games. But again, we don't know maybe if there was something else he was supposed to be doing. Rob Gronkowski can go to Vegas. Was Tom Brady there? Was Tom Brady getting pictures at a pool party or whatever? A quarterback is different. He's held to a different standard because he is the most important player on the team. He's the guy that is another coach. He's an extension of the coach.
I'll tell you this, Johnny Manziel. Teddy Bridgewater isn't checking out the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's not. He's just
Well,
not.
I don't think there's anybody checking out the Minnesota Timberwolves, honestly.
That's the thing. I mean, he would have to watch Andrew Wiggins and Thaddeus Young and Anthony Bennett.
It's not really a fair comparison.
It's more like a punishment.
Yeah.
Oh, Teddy, you played bad? You have to go watch the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Go watch the Wolves.
Blake Bortles is not going to Orlando Magic games. There's a certain way that you have to conduct yourself. And I know it's just one Cavs game, but it's just the big picture. There's a certain work ethic attached to being a starting quarterback in the NFL, and you have to work harder than other guys. This isn't Texas A&M anymore. This isn't college. You have to outwork everybody. Your talent is not going to be enough, not at the most important position in the NFL. And the other thing, Dan, he's a rookie. And he hasn't made a start in his NFL career. He has to show this coaching staff and this organization that he should be the starting quarterback. So he has to go above and beyond.
Yeah.
He has to make sacrifices now and then get the rewards later. And right now, I don't know that he's making those sacrifices.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, we're not criticizing him necessarily for going to that Cavs game. You know, I don't want this to turn into, well, he's just living his life or whatever. But the bigger point is, it was the night before he might have been named the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. It just wasn't good timing. The guy can go to a Cavs game whenever he wants, but it just wasn't good timing, and he's got to show that he's ready to be that quarterback. He's ready to make that commitment because his teammates are going to follow his lead. The great quarterbacks, they put in that work, they put in that effort, and it sends a message to their teammates. And when they say to their teammates, when they get on their teammates, hey, you need to be doing this, they're going to listen because they know that you've been in that facility, 10, 12 hours a day. You've been putting in the work. Like I said, you are an extension of that coaching staff. They're going to listen to you.
And you had that report from Fox's Pam Oliver about Johnny Manziel getting there right at 11 o'clock for the game yesterday.
Yeah.
Now, 11 o'clock is the cutoff for the Browns, so the Browns have said that Johnny Manziel was not late. But if the deadline is 11 and you're pushing that deadline, you seem like you're just pushing your boundaries. If the deadline's 11 and you want to be the starting quarterback of the Browns and you want to tell Mike Pettin, Kyle Shanahan, and everybody in the organization, you should be going to me instead of Brian Hoyer, get your butt there at 9:30. Get your butt there at 8:30. I don't care. Don't push it right up to 11 because that is going to make you look bad, Johnny Manziel. He needs to get it, Dan, and I just am not 100% convinced that he gets it. On the field, I've seen some magic. On the field, I saw the spark against Buffalo. He's got the only touchdown from a quarterback in the last 3 games. Those things are inarguable. But does he get it? I don't know.
And that's credit to Brian Hoyer because he has, for his lack of skills, his lack of talent, his lack of ability.
He was probably there at 5.
You don't go from being an undrafted quarterback to 3rd string, to being on NFL rosters, to getting an opportunity to start, to starting a handful of games for a football team without working really hard. And for Brian Hoyer, for all his deficiencies, the one thing you can never say about him is that he's not prepared, he's not ready to face an opponent, he's not putting in the work. Yeah. And Johnny Manziel needs to learn from that. And I think in the end, this should be a good thing for Johnny Manziel, that he had to come into this league. He goes from texting Dowell Loggins, we're going to wreck this league, to sitting behind Brian Hoyer for 13 games. Yeah. And he sees how Brian Hoyer's playing, he sees Brian Hoyer play a game like he did against Buffalo, and the coaching staff still say, we're going with Brian Hoyer. Yeah. He knows what's going on, and he's got to learn from this. He's got to take this opportunity to realize that, like you said, you're not at A&M anymore, kid. The players are better. The talent on the defensive side is better. They are those holes that you ran through at Texas A&M, those big chunks of field that were in front of you, they're not going to be there anymore. You got to be smarter. It's not just about talent.
Should have been a message. At the same time, I mean, the clock struck midnight 3 weeks ago on Brian Hoyer.
They've been stretching this thing out a lot.
I mean, my man turned into a pumpkin against Jacksonville, and now it's noon the next day, and Mike Pettin's
got that field goal in Atlanta. And,
holy moly.
And by the way, let's talk about a couple other things, okay?
Goodness.
The Browns have a real kicking problem.
You think? You don't say.
I want to know who the kickers they brought in to try out earlier this week were, because those guys could not take the job from Billy Cundiff. And Joe Banner, Joe Banner on Twitter, allegedly, loves to take victory laps, right?
Of course.
Loves to take his victory laps.
Joe Banner loves himself as much. Oh, my gosh, yes.
I did this. We found this guy. Hey, Joe, let's get some Phil Dawson tweets, my man. That was not a good decision by you. This is not some emotional attachment to Phil Dawson. This is Phil Dawson being one of the best kickers in the NFL. You decided to replace him with Billy Cundiff, who missed one of the biggest field goals in recent NFL history. That's who you replaced Phil Dawson with. That was not a good decision, Joe Banner. I'm not sure if you've tweeted much about that one.
By the way, I think the only person that loves themselves more than Joe Banner loves himself is Josh Cribbs. Josh Cribbs cannot talk enough about Josh Cribbs. I mean, for somebody, I don't know, for somebody who's probably borderline Hall of Famer, this dude's been wearing a gold jacket for years in his own mind.
Josh Cribbs, that was a legendary return by Josh Cribbs and Trent Richardson yesterday. Cribbs getting laid out by Marlon Moore.
Yeah.
By the way, on the other side, the Browns' return game just remains atrocious. Travis Benjamin it's over.
I love it. I was listening to the first part of the game on the radio because I was driving back from the radio station yesterday. And I think Travis Benjamin returned it for 12 yards, maybe 12 yards. Jim Donovan made that thing seem like a punt return for a touchdown. He was so excited.
It's the equivalent in Travis Benjamin's world.
Most dudes are getting 12 yards at least once per game in the punt return, and the Browns get it once every 2 months. And it's like they won the Super Bowl. It was like Jacoby Jones returned it for a touchdown.
All right, we got about 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and do some game balls.
All right. How about the defense? We'll start on defense, right?
That's really the only side that gets them.
We'll start and finish on defense because, no, I've got another one.
Oh, okay. Well, let's start with the other one. I want to know. I can't wait.
The staple in game balls.
Oh.
My man. the troll of all trolls on Twitter, the real-life troll, and not like in the guy that lives under the bridge type thing, but in the good kind. Spencer Lanning, the punter of the Cleveland Browns.
Sure, why not?
He set up the first touchdown,
That's
did he
true.
not?
That's true.
He did.
All right. I'm going to give one to, you know what? Let's give it to Justin Gilbert. Scored a touchdown on defense.
Right.
Let's give it to Justin Gilbert. He was called upon when K'Wan Williams left the game. You know, we talk about changing expectations for the team. All right. Obviously, we expected a lot more out of the number 8 pick in the draft coming into this season. It was a train wreck. We have to lower those expectations a little bit. And yesterday, when he got called upon, he played well, and he had his first pick 6.
Yep.
He deflected a pass down near the end zone. You know, Gilbert was all right. So we'll give him a game ball.
Okay, I think that's fine. He's got as many touchdowns as Brian Hoyer does in the last 50-plus possessions. Barkevious Mingo.
Yes.
How about my man
Who, by the way, has
Mingo?
been putting his hand in the dirt a lot more, and you're starting to see some results out of that.
This is the kind of guy who is putting in the extra effort, Dan. We're talking about dedication to your craft, and Johnny Manziel may not be. We don't know this for sure, but there aren't a lot of signs that he is dedicated to his craft. Barkevious Mingo, dedicated to his craft.
Playing with a harness.
Playing with a harness. He's been hurt. He's clearly not 100%. Harassing Andrew Luck all day yesterday, getting in his face, making him throw the ball before he wanted to. And he's been in and out of the rotation at times, and he's been trying to do different things, covering guys at times, playing special teams at times, rushing the passer other times, trying to stop the run other times. He's been asked to do a lot of different things that he wasn't asked to do in college, and he had the game of his life yesterday.
Jim Leonard.
It only took 2 years, but he had the game of his life. Way to go, Barkevious.
So there's some victory laps for
right.
Joe Banner. Jim Leonard.
Okay.
Another big game for him, covering for Tashawn Gibson. Interception, big sack on Andrew Luck. Interception on the 2-point conversion, although Andrew Luck did just throw it directly to Jim Leonard. But look, when Tashawn Gibson went out, a lot of people were worried. A lot of people felt like the Browns' secondary was in trouble. And Jim Leonard stepped in, and the Browns haven't missed a beat.
I think that's a really good one, Dan. How about Paul Kruger?
Yeah, forced the fumble.
Yeah, forced the fumble. That sack on Andrew Luck, that was a penalty, should not have been a penalty. I mean, come on.
And you know what? Some flags are worth it.
Yes.
You hit the quarterback like that, even if it's a roughing the passer penalty, he remembers that.
Right. That's textbook right there.
Yeah.
What the NFL wanted Paul Kruger to do in that situation, he did. And he still got a penalty for it. So Paul Kruger gets another one.
Man, I don't know. We can just give one to the whole second. Yeah, we haven't even talked about Joe Hayden.
You got to give it to Joe. And I know he got beat a couple of times by T.Y. Hilton. That's going to happen. The other guy gets paid too here, folks. We do have to understand that. But for the most part, T.Y. Hilton, the number 1 offensive weapon for the Colts, was eliminated from that game. And he started to get free when Joe Hayden started to move to other guys.
Yeah. I thought the whole secondary yesterday played really well. It just seemed like every time Andrew Luck threw the ball, there was a guy right there. I mean, they were covered, and Andrew Luck had nowhere to go. The secondary was fantastic yesterday. They were the reason that the Browns were even in that game. A game that no one thought they had a chance to win. They should have won, and I think it starts with the secondary. Just give all those guys game balls. Look at your front seven. Desmond Bryant played very well. We mentioned Mingo. We mentioned Kruger. Craig Robertson had a decent game, although he still struggles a little bit in coverage, as does Kirksey. The defense was fantastic yesterday, and the Browns still lost, and now it's probably Johnny time.
Is there anyone on offense? I'm trying to rack my brain right now, thinking, I got nothing, man.
I mean, unless you want to say Crow for scoring that touchdown before halftime, I don't know. I don't know. Both running backs had around 50 yards. Josh Gordon didn't do much of anything.
No, the offensive line wasn't a standout performer yesterday, so... You know, Jordan Cameron came back. He made a couple of plays here and there, but that's not game ball worthy. I don't think anybody on the offense. I'm sorry. You had 60 yards in the second half of offense. I mean, that's ridiculous. 60 yards. I think Philadelphia got more than that against Seattle yesterday. That wasn't the 85 Bears, folks. That's the other thing that we have to keep in mind here with Brian Hoyer's struggles here against Indianapolis, and the week before that against Buffalo, the week before that against Atlanta, the week before that against Houston. none of those teams are considered top 5 defenses in the NFL. That's not Seattle that they played. That was Indianapolis. Ben Roethlisberger threw 6 touchdown passes against this same Indianapolis defense. And oh, by the way, Indianapolis yesterday was playing without its best defensive player. Vontae Davis was on the sidelines. That was a break for the Cleveland Browns, and they still couldn't score enough against that team. Come on.
All right, that's another morning after in the books. The Browns lose to Indianapolis. We'll be back next week. They take on Cincinnati. Then they wrap up their season with 2 on the road in Carolina and in Baltimore. Still technically alive in the playoff chase. Got to win next week against Cincinnati. See what happens. It'll likely be a rookie starting quarterback. We'll have complete coverage of everything that happens today at cleveland.com/Browns. Mike Pettine's press conference at 4 o'clock.
Yes. And if it's not Johnny Manziel this week, if they go back to Brian Hoyer after his terrible performance yesterday against Indianapolis, we know that there's something going on there with Manziel.
That's a red flag for Johnny Manziel. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.